looking at Michelle and her journey through the first 8 chapters of Survive the Island.
Right.
You know how this game works, weekly chapters?
Yeah.
Lots of big decisions to make, and all those decisions Michelle makes are shaping her own personal story.
Yeah.
And we've got tons of notes, observations we got to get through.
Yeah, let's dive in.
Excuse
So
me.
it's fascinating how Michelle's gameplay seems to be changing as she gets deeper into the island.
Right.
You know, Survive the Island isn't just about getting to the end.
Yep.
It's about how you get there and what those choices you make say about you as a player.
Okay, so let's rewind all the way back to the beginning. Chapter 1, Michelle wakes up on the beach. Classic case of amnesia.
Yeah.
And there's footprints leading off into the jungle, BUT. There's also that shipwreck just sitting there offshore.
Yeah,
Most players would go straight for that loot, wouldn't they?
absolutely. That shipwreck is like a golden opportunity to grab those resources early on. But Michelle, she chooses to follow those footprints. She goes for the other survivors first. She thinks that there's strength in numbers, which tells us she's a strategic thinker. She values community over that instant gratification.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
So it seems like she's playing the long game, recognizing that alliances could be important down the line, but does that make her a cautious player?
Well, her actions in Chapter 2 seem to reinforce that idea.
Okay.
Remember, she's the one pushing for shelter, saying that a solid home base is super important for the group.
Right.
It's a very practical approach,
Yeah.
really valuing stability and safety.
So far she's playing it safe, making all the smart moves.
Yeah.
But this game is known for throwing curveballs.
Oh, yeah.
So did we see any cracks in Michelle's composure?
Chapter 4, the storm. Things get really intense.
Yeah.
That shelter collapses, and suddenly we see a totally different side to Michelle. She talks about feeling overwhelmed by fear of the storm, of course, but also Kate's weird behavior. And that's enough to make her abandon all of her careful planning and just run.
Wow. It's almost like that survival instinct kicks in
Mm-hmm.
and overrides all rational thought.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, is that a sign of weakness in this game?
Right.
Or is that just a normal human response to a terrifying situation?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
It definitely makes her a more complex character. We
Right.
see that even the most strategic players can still be vulnerable to fear,
Yeah.
which reminds us that Survive the Island isn't just about logic.
Right.
It's about how we react when things get tough.
And this is where that bloodwood tree comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Chapter 5, the storm's calming down,
Mm-hmm.
and Michelle stumbles into this clearing.
And she is at her lowest point, exhausted, isolated, desperate.
Yeah.
And there's this tree, this strange energy coming from it, sap oozing out.
Right.
She says she feels like the island is offering her something.
But she drinks the sap, knowing nothing about it. That seems like a huge risk, even for someone in her position.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about her?
I think it's a turning point in her story.
Okay.
On the one hand, it speaks to her desperation. She's willing to try anything to survive.
Right.
But on the other hand, it shows a change in how she sees the island.
So instead of just a dangerous place, she's starting to see it as a potential source of power?
Exactly. There's an element of trust there. Or maybe it's more like acceptance. And this newfound trust, this acceptance, leads her to make another interesting choice in Chapter 6.
She decides to rest at the base of the tree.
Right.
Even though she's still vulnerable. She even experiences those strange visions of the island's past.
Yeah, and those visions, instead of scaring her off, seem to actually strengthen her connection to the island.
Okay.
She's not trying to escape anymore. She's
Yeah.
trying to understand. And this isn't just about surviving physically anymore. It's about something deeper.
And then in Chapter 7, we see this big shift. Remember the silent figures? They appear for the first time just lurking in the shadows, and Michelle, now full of that bloodwood sap, climbs the tree.
And not to hide, but to get a better view. This is the opposite of her running away before. She's not reacting out of fear now. She's being strategic. She's using her new strength and knowledge.
It's like she's finally embracing the power of the island.
Yeah.
Using it to help herself. It's a far cry from that cautious player we saw back in Chapter 1.
Absolutely. And it all leads up to that crazy cliffhanger in Chapter 8. Michelle is way up high in that tree, realizing that sap has changed her with those mysterious figures watching from below. We don't know what they're going to do.
Wow. What a moment. That's where we'll leave it for now.
Yeah.
Part 2 of your personalized deep dive will pick up with Michelle's options, and we'll talk about what this transformation means for her and what it might say about her as a player. Stay tuned.
It's really something how Michelle's approach has changed from that like super practical mindset to something way more intuitive.
Yeah, it's like she's learning to trust her gut as much as her head.
Exactly. Like, remember those early chapters?
Right.
She was all about building a safe base, stocking up on resources, all logical choices. But as the game goes on,
Yeah.
she starts taking more risks, relying more on her instincts.
Like drinking that bloodwood sap. That was a huge gamble.
Oh, yeah. Huge. But it paid off in the end.
It did.
Gave her all those new abilities and insights. It makes you wonder if sometimes the best paths are the ones we don't see coming.
Right. You think there's just one right way to play the game?
Nope, not at all. Every player's journey is different,
Yeah.
shaped by the choices they make and how they interpret what the island throws at them.
And Michelle's journey is all about transformation.
Mm.
She goes from this cautious planner to someone who embraces the unknown. It's pretty amazing.
What's interesting is how her transformation seems tied to that bloodwood tree.
Yeah,
It's not just some weird sap dispenser, it's like a direct link to the island's power, don't you think?
totally. It's where she finds safety, where she gets those visions, where she faces her fears. It's like a symbol for her growth.
And remember, in this game, player reasoning is everything. The explanations behind her choices. They tell us so much about how her mindset is changing, how she's understanding the island more and more.
It's not just what she does, it's why she does it.
Exactly.
And that's what makes her story so interesting.
It sets her apart from those players who just want to win no matter what.
Yeah,
Michelle's journey is about more than just getting off the island.
right.
It's about discovering herself, pushing her limits, embracing the unknown.
And isn't that what surviving really means?
Mm-hmm.
Not just staying alive, but growing stronger emotionally and everything?
Exactly. Finding that strength inside yourself to face whatever comes your way. And that brings us back to that cliffhanger at the end of chapter 8.
Oh, yeah.
Michelle's up in that bloodwood tree, feeling the island's power running through her, and those mysterious figures are down below watching her.
Right.
She's got three choices. She can face those figures head on, she can defy them, or she can climb even higher searching for more knowledge.
Each option shows a different side of her transformation.
Mm.
It's a decision that will reveal not just how she thinks strategically, but also how well she understands what's really happening on this island.
Exactly.
It's kind of wild how Michelle's story really hits on some like universal themes.
Oh, totally. It's like we're watching one of those classic hero stories play out.
Right. It's that whole going into the unknown, facing your fears, and coming out stronger on the other side. Michelle starts off all cautious and practical. And now look at her, embracing the island's power, making big decisions, trusting her gut.
Yeah, it makes you think maybe we all have that potential inside us, that ability to change when we're pushed out of our comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another thing that's so cool about Survive the Island is how it messes with your sense of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Remember those visions Michelle had at the Bloodwood Tree?
Oh, yeah.
They weren't just random.
Mm.
They were like glimpses into the island's past, all its secrets and power.
Instead of freaking out, they pulled her in even deeper. Like she realized that to truly survive on this island, you need more than just muscles. You got to be open to the weird stuff. See what's hidden beneath the surface.
It's like she's learning to understand the island. Like it has its own language.
Exactly.
And that connection gives her a real advantage.
It's not just about outsmarting the other players.
Right.
It's about getting in tune with the island itself, recognizing that it's a powerful force. It has its own plans.
Which brings us back to that cliffhanger at the end of chapter 8.
Oh, yeah.
Michelle up in the tree facing that huge decision.
Mm-hmm.
Those figures down below, they're a big question mark. They represent all the challenges that are still to come. Will she face them head on? Will she push back against them? Or will she climb even higher, looking for more answers?
Such a tough choice.
I know. Each path shows a different side of her transformation. It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about who she wants to be.
Exactly. Her decision will tell us a lot about how she understands this island and everything that's going on.
Well, that about wraps up our deep dive into Michelle's journey so far. It's been a wild ride.
It really has. And her story's not over yet.
Nope. We can't wait to see what happens next.
You know what I think is so fascinating about this game? Is that it takes this choose your own adventure concept to a whole new level. It's not just about picking A or B. It's about understanding why the player makes those choices, like what's going on in their head. It really gets into the psychology of decision making under pressure.
Absolutely. And Travis's story is like the perfect example of that. Right from
Right.
chapter 1, he wakes up on the beach with a pounding headache. That first big decision, head into the jungle or towards the shipwreck. What does he do? He chooses the jungle.
And his reasoning, he says, the jungle is filled with all sorts of necessities
Yeah.
versus baking on the beach.
Right.
Right off the bat, you can see his pragmatism, shining through. He's thinking about survival,
Right.
about resources, about making, the most logical choice.
Exactly. And that pragmatism, combined with a healthy dose of confidence, seems to be his like go-to approach. Remember chapter 2? When he meets those other players in the clearing,
Hmm.
again, he chooses the riskier path, venturing deeper into the jungle.
Hmm.
It's like he trusts his instincts above all else.
Yeah, and that can be both a strength and a weakness, right? I mean, on the one hand, it allows him to act decisively, to, take charge in those uncertain situations. But on the other hand, it can also make him blind to,
Yeah.
other perspectives, to potential dangers that might not fit into his logical framework.
Totally. Which brings us to that pivotal moment in chapter 3. The storm hits. There's that eerie screech, and he stumbles upon, this narrow cave entrance. And for the first time, we see Travis hesitate. He refuses to go in. He says, ain't no way I'm going into a tight cave. It's almost like we're seeing a crack in his confident facade.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. You have this guy who faced the unknown head on up until this point, and then suddenly he's confronted with something that triggers, this deep-seated fear, makes you wonder if his boldness is more situational than we initially thought.
Totally. And it's not just about the fear itself,
Hmm.
but what it reveals about Travis's need for control,
Hmm.
out in the open. He feels like he can assess the situation, weigh his options, and, make a rational decision. But in that confined space, he loses that sense of control. It throws him off balance.
Yeah. And that loss of control, it kind of becomes this recurring theme in his journey, doesn't it? It's almost as if the island itself is testing him, pushing him to his limits. See how he reacts when his carefully constructed world starts to crumble around him.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think Travis's reaction in the chapters, following the bite, gives us some insights even when he's wounded. And battling those, psychological disturbances, his focus remains on logic and survival.
Yeah, in chapter 5, he's fixated on, finding resources, sanitizing the wound with ocean water. It's like he's clinging to his pragmatism,
Yeah.
even as the supernatural threat is growing within him, almost as if he's trying to rationalize something that defies all logic. Have you ever experienced something like that? Made a decision based on practicality, or maybe you should have listened to your gut? Oh, absolutely. I think we've all been there at some point. It's that feeling of being stuck in a routine, doing what we've always done, even when the world around us is changing. We rely on our old strategies even when they're no longer serving us, and in Travis's case, that rigid pragmatism might be blinding him to the real danger he's in.
Yeah, and that leads us to chapter 6, where things take a darker turn. Despite Jim's warnings,
Mhm.
Travis feels this overwhelming pull towards a cavern. And this time it's not just about, basic survival. He's seeking an elixir for instant healing. There's a desperation there, a hint that his judgment is slipping.
This is where I started to question whether Travis is truly in control or if the island is manipulating him. The island seems to be exploiting his desire for a quick fix, for a way to regain control, and leading him down a path that serves its own sinister purpose.
It's creepy, right?
Yeah,
The way the game seems to be playing with his deepest desires and fears. And then in chapter 7, inside the cavern, Travis meets more of these supernatural beings. It's the leader who reveals that the bite, it wasn't just a wound, it was a transformation, and the only way to complete it is to eat this glowing substance in the cave.
And this is where things get really tragic. Jim begs Travis to leave to fight the darkness. But Travis, he believes resistance is futile. He actually makes the conscious choice to join them. It's like his decisive nature, that thing that made him such a strong survivor in the beginning, has now led him to surrender his humanity. It's a disturbing thought, isn't it? That our strengths can be used against us, twisted to serve someone else's agenda.
Totally. I mean, think about a time when you were so sure of yourself, so confident in your path that you ignored all the warning signs.
Hmm.
It makes you realize how easy it is to fall into that trap to believe you're in control when you're actually being manipulated.
Exactly. And in Travis's case, that leads him to chapter 8. He eats the glowing substance and begins to transform. He sees visions of others who succumb to the island and believes he made all these choices freely, totally unaware he's being controlled.
It's heartbreaking because he's lost everything he valued.
Yeah.
His logic, his independence, his sense of self. Even Jim sees what's happening and flees for his life. The pack leader then informs Travis that the master wants to meet him, and that's where we leave off.
This cliffhanger is brilliant because it throws us right into Travis's dilemma. He's presented with three choices: follow the leader and embrace the change, follow but resist or devour more of the glowing substance. Each choice has, potentially dire consequences. But the real question is, does he even have a choice anymore?
Yeah, it really is a terrifying thought, isn't it? Like to be so completely stripped of your agency, your sense of self. It makes you think about, the nature of free will. Like, do we really have control over our choices? Or are we all just puppets, dancing on strings?
It does. And what's even more unsettling? Travis's story isn't some, far-fetched fantasy. It taps into a very real human experience. The struggle to maintain control in the face of overwhelming forces, whether those forces are external pressures, internal doubts, or, in Travis's case, a supernatural island with a pretty sinister agenda.
Right, exactly. And so as we kind of wrap up our analysis of Travis's journey so far,
Mm.
what can we, learn from it? What are the key takeaways here?
Well, I think one of the biggest lessons is the danger of unchecked confidence. Travis's unwavering belief in his own abilities, his refusal to consider other perspectives or even acknowledge the possibility of failure, it ultimately led him, down this path of destruction.
It's like that saying, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing, right?
Exactly. It's about cultivating a healthy skepticism, not just of the information we encounter, but also of our own, thought processes. We
Yeah.
need to be willing to question our assumptions, to seek out diverse perspectives, and to admit when we're wrong.
Because otherwise we risk becoming trapped in our own little echo chambers, blind to the potential pitfalls and opportunities that lie outside our limited field of vision.
Precisely. And that's where, the real learning, the real growth happens. It's about recognizing that our understanding of the world is always evolving and being open to adjusting our course when, new information comes to light.
It's like we all have our own personal islands in a way, right?
Hmm.
Those things that cloud our judgment, that hold us back from reaching our full potential.
I love that analogy. And the key to navigating those islands successfully is to develop, a deep sense of self-awareness, to understand our strengths and weaknesses, our biases and blind spots, and to be willing to ask for help when we need it.
Because, let's face it, none of us can survive alone. We need each other's support, guidance, and perspective to navigate, the complexities of life.
Absolutely. And that's something that Travis unfortunately failed to grasp: his insistence on going it alone, on relying solely on his own logic and intuition. It ultimately made him vulnerable to the island's, manipulation.
So as we leave Travis at this critical juncture in his journey, facing a choice that may determine his fate, let's remember that we too are constantly faced with choices. And those choices, big or small, shape who we are and where we end up.
But unlike Travis, we have the power to learn from his mistakes, to cultivate, the humility, the open-mindedness, and the adaptability we need to navigate our own islands and merge, stronger, wiser, and more connected on the other side.
All right, let's dive into Jill's journey in Survive the Island.
Sounds good.
We're at chapter 8, the halfway point,
Yeah.
and her approach to survival, I mean, it's this mix of intuition, adaptability,
Right.
and faith.
Yeah.
It's really got us thinking.
It's really interesting how she's approaching this,
Yeah,
because you'd think in a survival game, logic would be king.
right, exactly.
But Jill just leans into the unknown,
She does.
trusts her gut, and even more surprising, trusts the island itself.
Mm.
Like she sees some good in all this.
Yeah, it's like she's not seeing it as this hostile force,
Yeah,
but something else, something more.
definitely.
It's a really interesting take, especially in a game like Survive the Island.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got 27 players all fighting to survive.
Right.
Every week a new challenge, and every choice
Yeah,
could be the end for them.
exactly.
So to see Jill navigating all this with trust,
Hmm.
it's something we need to unpack.
We do. And if we go back to chapter 1, Awakenings,
Okay.
you see this trust right away. She wakes up on the beach, no memory, classic deserted island scene,
Right. Ocean, jungle.
the mysterious footprints,
Yeah.
but no panicking. She just follows them.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
She's driven by those basic needs. Find water, find a companion.
Yeah.
Right from the start, it's not just about surviving physically, but about connecting. It's
Absolutely.
that human need to find someone, an ally,
Right.
in this crazy situation.
Yeah, and that's a gamble.
Oh, huge.
Those footprints, they could lead to danger,
For sure.
but it shows how resilient she is.
Mm.
She believes connecting will help her survive.
It's like she's choosing to believe in the good, even when she's surrounded by the unknown.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Chapter 2, In the Unknown, she meets the others.
Yeah, a group of 8 strangers in a jungle clearing, all lost and confused.
Right.
She and 4 of them decide to head deeper into the jungle.
To find food and resources. That's a bold move.
It is.
Very proactive, not just waiting around.
Mhm.
But taking charge.
It's risky, though.
Oh, yeah, the jungle's full of who knows what.
Exactly.
But it's like she thinks taking action,
Yeah.
even if it's risky, is better than just waiting.
Right, like she's trying to stay one step ahead of the island,
Yeah.
anticipate what it throws at her.
Like she's playing chess with it or something.
Exactly.
So then comes Chapter 3, Your Storm.
Things take a turn there.
Definitely.
Deep in the jungle, they get this feeling like they're being watched.
Yeah, super ominous.
Then, bam, a huge storm hits.
Scary stuff.
Jill, along with Chris and Mayoli, they find a cave.
Right. And decide to take shelter.
It's more than just finding shelter, though.
What do you mean?
She mentions wanting to live to see another day
Okay.
and talks about exploring a skull structure later.
Huh. So even in a storm,
Yeah.
she's thinking ahead.
She is thinking about the future, not just surviving the storm.
But what comes after?
Exactly.
Wow. It's like she had this faith she'll make it through the storm. Like there's a purpose to her being there.
Right. A reason to keep going.
Then we get to Chapter 4, The Dark Beckoning.
Inside the cave, they find this huge chamber.
Oh, yeah, I remember this.
4 paths leading out.
The Whispering Path, Shifting Wall, the Bloodwood Trail, and the Path of Silence.
Each one creepier than the last.
And Jill, being Jill, chooses the most mysterious one,
The Whispering Path, hoping to find clues from past survivors.
using knowledge to survive.
It shows how much she values information, understanding the island's past.
Right, to navigate the present.
She's not just reacting, she's thinking, strategizing.
Yet not just blindly hoping for info,
Right.
but thinking maybe she can learn from others' mistakes.
It's smart.
It is.
She's using everything she's got to survive.
Brains, resourcefulness, everything.
Absolutely.
Then, Chapter 5, As Night Falls.
This one was a roller coaster.
It was.
Jill and Mayoli, lost in the labyrinth. Then Mayoli vanishes.
Just like that.
Gone.
And Jill has to choose a path.
One lit by a blue light, comforting.
The other, completely dark.
A tough choice.
It is. And she rejects the logical choice. The light.
Saying logic has no place on this island.
Wow.
Embracing the darkness, trusting her gut.
Which, when you think about it, is kind of logical.
Yeah.
Nothing about this is normal.
Exactly.
Why should logic apply?
Right. It's a really interesting moment in the game.
Yeah.
She realizes how absurd it all is.
And this leap of faith takes her to Chapter 6. Surrender comes softly.
She finds this hidden cavern, untouched, peaceful.
Amazing.
A real oasis in all the chaos.
And she doesn't question it or fear it?
No, she sees it as a gift, a reward for trusting the unknown.
That's powerful.
It is. It shows how dark her faith is. She rests, eats, even sleeps in this unknown place.
Wow.
She says, I trust the island and will try to adapt to whatever it gives me. I have faith.
She really believes in this
Yeah.
and surrendering to the island.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme in her story.
It's fascinating and a little scary
Yeah.
to see someone embrace the unknown so completely. But is that trust misplaced?
That's the question.
Is the island really good, or is it tricking her?
Who knows?
And this question lingers into Chapter 7, The Cost of Survival.
Right. She wakes up feeling refreshed,
Yeah.
but also like something bad happened.
Uh-oh.
There's this unease, this feeling of a price to pay.
And even with that feeling,
Yeah.
she follows the flow of water,
Trusting in its symbolism.
of life and guidance.
Literally going with the flow, even when it feels wrong.
It's like she's saying, no matter what happens,
Yeah.
she'll keep moving forward, trusting the island to guide her.
And that flow leads her to Chapter 8, when the island calls your name. She emerges onto a sandy shore,
Okay.
sees a lone figure, and the ship's mast has moved.
Wow, a lot to take in.
Now she has to choose, approach the stranger,
Hmm.
wait and watch, or follow the mast.
Big decisions.
It's a turning point.
Yeah, her trust is really being tested now.
Absolutely. It's a real cliffhanger, right?
Wow.
Another player, the mast moving, it's like a whole new level of uncertainty.
Yeah, and until now, her challenges have been like environmental or spiritual. You know, storms, labyrinths, the island's whiskers,
Right.
things she can't control.
Right.
But now, it's another player, another person.
Exactly.
And that changes things.
It does, because now she has to deal with human behavior.
Right, yeah.
Manipulating, maybe even betrayal.
Ooh, yeah.
Makes you wonder if trust is even possible.
Like the game's upping the ante, saying, okay, you trust the island,
Right.
but what about other players?
Exactly. How she handles this could decide everything.
It's a test of her social skills, how well she reads people.
Hmm.
And we can't forget the mast.
Oh, yeah, the mass. That's a big one.
It's like a reminder that the island itself is playing too,
Hmm.
changing the rules, messing with the environment.
And getting rid of players.
Exactly. She's not just dealing with people,
No.
but this unpredictable force.
With its own agenda and moving the mast.
Yeah.
That's the island, making moves, pushing things along.
Like it's saying, I brought you here, now show me what you've got.
Hmm.
And back to Jill's choices.
Hmm.
The stranger, waiting, the mast.
Big decisions.
Each one is risky.
They are. Let's break it down.
Hmm.
Approaching the stranger, that's direct.
Hmm.
But super risky. You have to trust right away.
Yeah, could be dangerous.
Observing, you get information.
Right. You see what's happening.
But you might lose time.
Yeah, the island keeps changing.
And things can change fast.
Exactly, miss your chance.
Then there's the mass, trusting the island's guidance.
But could be leading her away from everyone else.
Deeper into the unknown.
It's like, do you trust your gut, analyze, or just let go?
What would you do?
Tough one. I mean, Jill's all about intuition,
She is.
but this feels different.
Yeah, there's so many things she can't control.
It's the ultimate test of her faith, how she adapts, and her courage.
We'll have to see what she does.
I'm really curious to see the next chapter.
Me too.
It's like Jill has this different kind of intelligence,
Hmm.
not just solving problems, but knowing when to let go.
That's a tough one, surrender.
It is. It goes against everything we're told.
We're all about control, achieving, knowing what's next.
Right. But Jill shows us the power of letting go,
Embracing the unknown, trusting life's flow.
believing you'll end up where you're meant to be.
It's not easy, though.
No. But she's faced so much, made choices that didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And every time, she comes out stronger.
Like she's found a strength that goes beyond logic.
And that's something we all have if we can just let go and trust.
Right, so we leave Jill at this crossroads.
Facing a huge decision.
And we're left feeling amazed by her, how strong her faith is, how she trusts her gut, and how she surrenders to what is.
It's inspiring.
It is. Maybe it'll inspire us to do the same.
Trust our instincts. Be
Mhm.
open to the unknown. Have faith that we can get through anything.
Right, having faith in the journey, believing you can handle whatever comes up.
It's like Jill's showing us a different kind of intelligence.
Yeah, not just book smarts.
Right. It's more than that. It's knowing when to just let go.
Surrender.
Exactly. Which is hard.
Whoa, it goes against everything we're taught.
Right. We're supposed to be in control, get things done, know what's coming next.
But Jill shows us sometimes the best thing is to just let go.
Embrace the unknown. Trust the flow.
Believing you'll end up right where you need to be.
And it's not always easy, but she's been through so much.
She has made some crazy choices.
Yeah, but look at her. She's stronger because of it.
It's like she's tapped into some hidden strength.
And we all have that, you know?
Yeah.
We just got to trust.
Trust the process, trust ourselves.
So we leave Jill at this turning point.
Facing a huge choice.
Yeah, and it's incredible to see her faith, her intuition, how she just surrenders to what is.
It really makes you think.
It does. It makes you want to try it, you know? Trust your gut. Be open to what comes. Have faith that you'll get through it.
Like Jill.
Okay, strap in everyone for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We're going deep into Survive the Island, specifically Chris's journey, through the first 8 chapters. And we're going to try to do it in 10 minutes. Kind of a tight analysis of his story, his big decisions, and, his chances of actually winning this whole thing.
And it has been quite a story so far.
Yeah.
From the second he wakes up on that beach with no memories.
Right.
He's thinking strategically, always a couple steps ahead, I think. It's clear from those first choices he makes, survival, that's his top priority.
For sure, like when he chooses to follow those footprints into the jungle, instead of going, towards that shipwreck.
Right.
He's not just reacting. He's actively looking for information and, maybe some allies.
Which is smart in a game like this. I mean, the creator's been pretty open about, pulling inspiration from stories like Lost and Mist.
Yeah.
Where the mystery is just as important as staying alive.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Chris finds the other players, ends up in a group of 8 survivors, all with amnesia. But there's that tension there, right? The island itself feels off somehow.
Yeah. The sources describe this like creeping dread,
Hmm.
this unnatural silence in the jungle.
Right.
And then that storm, that terrifying storm hits, it forces Chris, Jill, and Maoli into the obsidian labyrinth. That cave is where things start to get, well,
Dark.
yeah, dark.
So let's talk about this turning point. Chris has to pick a path, and they all feel ominous.
Right.
He ends up on the whispering path, drawn by, well, the promise of secrets. What does that tell us about him?
I think this is where we see a shift in his motivations. He's not just focused on basic survival anymore.
Mm.
He's interested in power, knowledge. It's a gamble, and it suggests he's willing to, take risks.
But doesn't that kind of contradict his earlier caution? He seems so focused on logic and staying safe.
It is interesting, isn't it? It's like maybe that initial caution was a facade, a way to size things up before, revealing his true nature.
Or maybe the island itself is influencing him, subtly pushing him down a specific path. After all, Mealy vanishes on that same path, right?
Right.
Adds to the mystery. And suggests that there are forces at play here beyond Chris's control.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah.
The island isn't just a setting, it's an active participant in the game,
Yeah.
shaping the narrative and messing with the players in ways they don't expect.
Okay, so Chris and Jill, they keep going.
Yeah.
Eventually reach a cavern. It's filled with these glowing crystals.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting.
This is where he encounters that voice, remember?
Oh, yeah.
That seductive voice that offers him power.
Yeah.
Incredible power. In exchange for, well, we don't know what exactly. But the fact that he takes the crystal, knowing it might be risky, that tells us a lot about him.
He wants that power.
Yeah.
And he's willing to pay the price, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of those old stories about temptation
Mm-hmm.
and the dangers of ambition, when it's left unchecked.
Totally. And from that point on, we see a real change in Chris. He gets more assertive, more confident.
Older.
Yeah, even ruthless sometimes.
Uh-huh.
The island's influence, it's definitely getting stronger.
It's like he's becoming someone else,
Yeah.
shedding his old self to embrace this new powerful identity.
Yeah.
And the sources describe it. It's like he enjoys it.
Yeah. The word monster comes up a lot connected to Chris at this point. He's not just a survivor now.
Right.
He's a force to be reckoned with, feared by the other players, and it seems like he's aligned with the island's, well, agenda, whatever that is.
Which brings us to that cliffhanger at the end of Chapter 8. Chris meets another survivor, Jordan, at the waterfall.
Mm.
And the island wants him to deal with Jordan. Gives him 3 very different choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, and every chapter feels more and more like a psychological thriller now. We got to break down these 3 options he has. Don't forget, the island wants him to deal with Jordan, the other player.
Right, right. The first option, it's the most brutal. And maybe the most revealing, too.
Uh-huh.
Chris could just eliminate Jordan.
Just get rid of him.
Gone. Totally gone from the game.
Wow.
It's a chilling thought, really reinforces how ruthless this island can be.
It would definitely confirm Chris has given in completely to the island's influence, become the monster everyone's talking about.
No.
But what would that mean for the rest of the game?
Imagine the other players realizing that Chris isn't just powerful, but, well, a killer. It'd send shockwaves through the game. Everyone would have to rethink their strategies.
Sure.
Some might side with him out of fear, but others, I think, would see him as the ultimate threat to be taken out.
So wouldn't that make Chris a target? He might gain power, but he'd also be putting a huge target on his back, wouldn't he?
Exactly. It's high risk, high reward. And that's what the island's all about, isn't it? This constant tension between individual ambition and the need to make alliances.
Okay, so what about that second option, where Chris, twists Jordan into something like himself?
Ah, yes. The option to share the power.
Mm-hmm.
Correct Jordan. Create another, monster in the island's image.
Yeah.
This choice is fascinating because, well, it suggests he wants control beyond just surviving,
Like he wants to build his own army, a group of followers,
Yeah.
with his power and I guess his loyalty to the island too.
Precisely. It makes you wonder, what's driving him? Is it a need for companionship, some twisted idea of belonging, or is it pure strategy to dominate the game by controlling others?
Well, we've seen how the island's power has changed, Chris. Physically, mentally. What would it do to Jordan? Would he fight back, or would he fall under that same dark influence that warped Chris?
That's tough to say. But the sources hint that the island's power, it's seductive, but it's insidious too. It preys on weaknesses, amplifies desires, twists how you see things.
So even if Jordan resists at first, the island might slowly wear him down.
Right.
turning him into another Chris, a loyal servant.
Chilling, isn't it? And it raises questions about free will in the game. Are they really making their own choices, or are they just puppets dancing to the island's tune?
Which leads us to the third option, defying the island. What happens if Chris rejects its command, chooses to, well, spare Jordan?
That's the path with the most uncertainty, for sure. It would mean directly challenging the source of his power, right?
Yeah.
Risking not only the island's anger, but maybe losing all that power.
It's risky. But wouldn't it also be a sign of him taking back some control, like a glimmer of his old self pushing back against the island?
It would suggest a change in his motivations, definitely. To defy the island, well, it would mean putting his own morals above blind obedience. A sign that maybe he hasn't completely given in to the corruption.
But let's be real, the island doesn't seem to like disobedience, right?
Right.
Remember Maoli
Of course.
vanishing? It's like the island just erases anyone who dares to question it.
It does seem that way. Chris would be taking a huge risk, not just with his own fare, but with Jordan's too. The island might see Jordan as a problem, someone who could turn against it, and just get rid of him to prevent that.
So even if Chris tries to save Jordan, there's no guarantee he'll actually survive.
It's hard to say. The island's playing its own game, and these players, well, they're just pawns in it, in this elaborate and often
Wow.
cruel scheme.
Back again for our deep dive on Survive the Island. It's been quite a ride watching Chris go from cautious player to, well, the island's monster.
Now we're at a crossroads. His decision about Jordan, this could change everything. It might lock him into his role with the island, show a glimpse of his old self, or who knows, something we haven't even considered.
Right. We talked about those three options, what the island wants him to do: eliminate Jordan, corrupt him, or just say no to the whole thing. Each path has consequences, not just for Chris, but for everyone left, and the story itself.
Yeah. That first option, getting rid of Jordan, that's the most direct impact, right? It'd take out a possible threat, make Chris more powerful in the game, but, like we said, it'd send a message to the other players, a scary one.
It basically confirmed he's the island's enforcer. Obey or else. It could work for a while, but wouldn't it also make people resent him? Maybe even rebel?
Think about it. If Chris is the top dog, the island becomes a very different place. Everyone's suspicious, desperate, maybe forced into alliances they don't want, or doing crazy things to survive.
It's almost like the island is pushing them towards conflict, using them for some experiment. All right, let's switch gears. What about option two, corrupting Jordan? That brings a whole other set of issues, doesn't it?
It does. That choice, it's about control. Not just surviving, but dominating, shaping the game to your will, turning Jordan into, well, another version of himself, another pawn for the island.
And wouldn't that blur the lines even more between what the players choose and what the island wants? It's like the island is using Chris to spread its influence, twisting everyone into its image.
It's a disturbing thought. Makes you think about what power really is. Is it about controlling others, or is it about resisting, making your own way?
Which brings us back to defiance. The biggest risk, but maybe the most hopeful too.
Yeah, choosing to go against the island, that'd be huge. A rejection of all that darkness that's been building around Chris. It'd be like his old self coming back, the strategist, but with a conscience now.
But wouldn't that be dangerous? The island hasn't exactly been kind to those who disobey.
True. There's no guarantee Jordan would be safe either. And the island could take away Chris's powers, leaving him with nothing. It's a big gamble.
But couldn't it inspire others? What if his rebellion starts something bigger? People working together, rejecting the island's control.
It's possible, sure, though maybe not likely. If Chris takes that path, he could become a symbol of hope, a way to fight back in a game that seems designed to make everyone turn against each other.
So 3 paths, each with a different ending, each showing a different side of Chris. The question is, which one will he choose?
And that is the question on everyone's mind. We're at the halfway point in Survive the Island, and things couldn't be more intense. We'll have to wait for Chris's decision in Chapter 9. But for now, let's look back at how far we've come.
Right. Chris started out cautious, gathering information. Then as the island's influence took hold, he became the monster, powerful but, well, not exactly good.
His choice about Jordan, it's a perfect example of what this game's all about. The temptation of power, the fight to stay yourself, and that struggle between survival and doing what's right.
Survive the Island. It's more than just a game, isn't it? It's like looking in a mirror. Shows us what we're capable of, good and bad, and the decisions we make when everything's on the line.
We can only guess what Chris will do, but whatever he chooses, it's going to change the rest of the game.